Okay, so I think last week we just focused mainly on
hmm
doing some tactics, right? We looked at the pin and the fork again, right? Yeah? Okay, alright. So today we'll like go over the pin and the fork again, and then we'll also go on to like the end games that we were doing, alright, before, like the pawn end games. Okay? So let me start this. Alright, so we'll be doing fork and we'll also look at the pin, alright? Okay. Alright, so for example, this is black to play, and we need to use like a pin in this case, alright? So first, I'll just show you the first move because it's a bit difficult, but okay, in this position, it's black to play and checkmate in one move. Let's go, Adrian. Adrian, you're on mute.
Hmm?
Okay. How about Viksha?
I was thinking bishop to wait. Never mind, the king can kill it.
Okay, alright. How about Vishnu?
Rook to A1.
Alright, yeah, nice. Rook to A1 check, alright? Okay, so it wasn't actually mate in one. Apparently, white can defend, but we can just take the knight, right? So basically, here, just to review what a pin is, it's actually, can anybody tell me what a pin is if they know? Isa?
It's like when one piece is covering another piece. So, like one piece has to move.
It's kind of. So it's when one of our pieces, is attacking one of our opponent's pieces, and behind it there's another one of our opponent's pieces, right? So here these two, the king and the rook, are in the same line, right? So that means that if the rook moves, then the bishop will be attack. Oh, sorry, not like that. So if the rook moves, then the bishop will be attacking the king, right? And white can't allow that. So that means that right now the white rook cannot move. Okay, so that's basically what a pin is. When two of your opponent's pieces are in the same row, and when you attack it with one of your pieces, then one of your opponent's pieces can't move, right? So here, like the rook can't move. And so imagine if this bishop, it wasn't here, then how would white be able to defend with his rook? Bisha.
Wait, what was the question again?
So imagine
How
if this bishop wasn't here, how would white defend?
they can replace the bishop and then wait, can't the queen kill the bishop?
Yeah, okay. So I'm saying imagine right now it's after I just gave the check, right? And
hmm
let's imagine that black didn't have a bishop right here. How would white be able to defend the check right here?
Um, he can defend it by yeah,
Right.
probably.
Do you want to give someone else a chance?
Okay.
All right. How about is it Rajesh?
It's also um.
Oh, sounds like
So the rook goes to 1F.
yeah, so
F.
yeah, F1. So you say the
Yeah.
letter before the number. But yeah, that's right. So if this bishop, it wasn't here and there was no pin like this, then the rook would be able to move, right? Because right now the white rook, the white rook can't move. But if this rook was able to move, then he can go to f1 and he'll block the check, right? So this pin is stopping white from blocking the check, right? Okay, so does everyone get that? Okay, alright. Actually, wait, Vishnu, do you have a question?
Oh, I was actually raising my hand.
Okay, alright. And Issa, do you have a question?
No, I did on accident.
Okay, alright. Now let's go on to the next one. Okay, over here. Okay, well this doesn't really showcase much, but how about we'll just play it like this, alright? It's white to play and it's checkmate in one move right here. Uh, just give me a second, by the way, alright? Okay, I'm back. Alright, how about Dave?
Queen to f7.
Nice, yeah, queen to f7 checkmate. Alright, and this is just a simple, the king can't take the queen because the knight's guarding, and then it can't move anywhere else, right? Our queen's guarding both of the king's escape squares on e8 and g7, and then black's pieces are on e7 and g8. Okay, alright. Mm. Okay, yeah, this one's a good one. So, alright, this is black to play. It's actually pretty complicated, but I think it's fine. Let's go revanche. You have to use a fork, by the way.
Is this a fork?
Yeah, this is a fork.
Knight to f2.
Alright, knight to f2, and now when black takes the knight, yeah, revanche, you can just keep saying it.
Queen takes queen and f2.
Well, actually, the queen can't take the queen because there's also a pin happening here. So right now, the black queen, it's under attack. If it moves away
Queen
from
takes
this file,
rook.
yeah. So yeah, that's right. So the right answer is queen takes rook. But the just for everyone else, really quick. So we had this knight check, right? And this is attacking both our opponent's king and rook at the same time, right? So that's a fork. Basically, that means if the king moves, then we can take the rook. Alright, that'd be pretty easy. Except, now what if white takes the knight? Now that looks like a pretty bad move. What if we just take back with our queen? Well, the problem is, white is giving a pin at the same time. So our queen, it can't take the opponent's queen, because then the rook would be attacking our king, right? You guys see that? Does anyone have any questions about that really quick? Because it's kind of complicated. Uh, Rajesh, or sorry, Satvik, do you have a question?
My hand button was
Okay,
accidentally.
yeah. Alright, and Viksha, do you have a question?
I was just using my hand to answer the answer.
Okay. So yeah, if the queen moved away from the D file, this is the D file, right? All the squares on D8 through D1 is all the D file. If the queen moved away from the D file, then the opponent's rook would be attacking our king, right? Okay, so that's why we can just take the rook. Is it? It's Jacob, right? Or is that Malene?
What? From the black queen, why can't you just take the rook down?
Yeah,
Like
so
you
that
do
yeah,
the rook.
that is the right answer. So yeah, you can take the rook. So if the white is taking the knight, right? We can't take the queen, but if you can see, now this rook is undefended. Before we couldn't take the rook because in this case, let's say as soon as black played rook d1, if we tried to take the rook, then black's queen would also, it would just take back, right? Or white's queen would just take back, right? But now the queen is no longer defending the rook on d1, so we can take, right? So does anyone have any questions on that? Satvik?
Hmm. Why would you do that? Because then the pawn will take your queen.
Remember, white is going down, or sorry, going down, so
Oh
and
yeah.
pawns can't capture backwards. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's just do one more, and then we'll start doing what we're doing for the day. All right. This one's pretty complicated, but it's mate in one with using like a fork, or not a fork, a pin. It's white to play. Let's go, Dave.
Queen to A7.
All right, so Dave says Queen A7. How about Viksha?
No.
I had like two answers.
All right. Well, what do you think is
But,
the best answer? Try and
the same as Dave. That was my
okay, the
first
save.
one.
All right. Okay. What about Oh yeah, Dave. Do you want to switch your answer?
Yeah. I meant rook. I mean, what is it called? The very edge one.
The rook on A1. You mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
To A7. Yeah, A7.
Okay. So now we have Queen A7 and Rook A7. How about Malene? Is that your
Oh
name?
my.
Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
So you can move the rook to like A7, or you can just move the queen to E7.
Okay. So you're saying Rook A7 or Queen E7. Okay. How about let's just go one more. Tabit.
Can I change the answer?
Rook E7.
Rook A7. Okay. And Viksha, did you want to change your answer
Yeah.
to what?
Never mind. Can I move the rook at F8 to F7?
Okay, alright. So let's just look at, we have four moves right here, so let's just look at each one of these, alright? So first, I'll just play a random move, so this is obviously not the right move. So let's go here. Alright, so black just moved here, right? Now it's white to play. So we had Queen A7, Rook A7, Queen E7, and Rook F7, right? Now let's look at these one by one, alright? Let's start with Rook F7. So there's nothing wrong with this check, right? You're attacking your opponent's king, but what can black do? Because remember, the three things you can do when you're in check are, is actually, can anybody answer that? The three things you can do when you're in check? Adrian?
Block.
Yeah.
Um. Move
Yeah.
and attack.
Yeah, so just capture. So the piece that's giving the check, if you can just, if there's a way to take the piece that's giving the check, then that would work. So that's capture, basically. Alright? So capture, block, or move. So in this case, uh, there's no way to capture our rook, right? But there is a way to block. It's not very, I mean, there's one way to block. Black can move the bishop all the way back here, right? So that's one way to block the check. And also, the king could move backwards, right? Because before, the rook was guarding all three of these squares where the king could move backward. But now once we give the check, or sorry, once we give the check, now these three squares are undefended, so the king could go back. Alright, so rook f7, this doesn't work. And queen e7, does anybody see the problem with queen e7? Vishnu?
The queen can capture the queen on e7.
Yeah, so the black queen can just capture the white queen on e7, right? So the problem with queen e7 is now when you think the three things when you can do when you're in check. So first we'll look at capture, and immediately there is a way to capture the queen, right? So we can immediately just play queen takes e7. So that doesn't work. All right, look at rook f7. All right, so queen a7. How about this? Does anybody see what's wrong with queen a7? Uh, how about Satvik? You're on mute, Satvik. Satvik, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
So what was the sentence again?
Yes. So what can black play in this position to like stop or like counter the check?
Knight, um, knight to 7-1. 7, I mean a7.
Yeah, knight takes a7, right? So the knight can just take our queen. So even though it's a good check, right, we were able to give a check and capture a pawn at the same time. The problem is black can just capture our queen back and we didn't gain anything. So that leaves us with the last move, which is rook a7. And I think a bunch of you guys said this. So yeah, this is the right move. And why is this? But I have a question for you guys, alright? What if black takes a rook? Revanche?
The knight's pinned.
Exactly. So that was the main part of this puzzle, right? So the knight, it can't take the rook. So even though it looks like the same as before with queen a7, the knight can just take the queen. So why can't the knight take the queen, or take the rook this time? The problem is this pin right here. So this queen is attacking the knight, and behind the knight is the king, right? So now when this knight moves, then the king would be in danger, right? You could see that the computer is giving this like red symbol on the king. So the king would be in danger. So the knight can't move. So there's now that means that there's no way to capture the rook, right? Now is there any way to block the check? So basically, can black put a piece on b7? No. There's no way for black to put a piece there. And now let's just look and see if there's any place for the king to move. So, can the king move anywhere backwards? No, we already talked about that, right? Our rook on f8 is guarding all three of those squares. It can't go to d6 or b6 because our queen is guarding both those squares. And it can't go to d7 or b7 because our rook on a7 is guarding all those squares, right? So that means that the king is guarded in from all the sides. And obviously its own knight is on c6, right? So it can't go to c6. And that means that this is checkmate, alright? So does anyone have any questions on this tactic? Let's go with Viksha. Do you have a question?
Um, so the rook can also kill the king because the knight's not gonna attack or capture the rook.
Are you talking about right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so since black can't do anything, we'll just be able to take the king, alright? And Dave, do you have a question? Okay, no? Alright. Alright, so then let me just go back to sharing this tab. And you guys can see, I'll just show you real quick. Rook to a7, and that's checkmate. Alright? Okay, so now let's go on to the next thing. Okay. You guys see this new board, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, alright. So, we're gonna continue with what we were doing in like a bunch of the previous classes, right? And that was pawn endgames, alright? So we'll take today as mainly just a review session of what pawn endgames are, right? Because what we did is we started off the class like from the beginning of the year. We started with openings, right? We like looked at the main opening principles, and then we looked like just a little bit at the middle game, but we mainly skipped over the middle game, and then we went straight to pawn endgames now, right? So I think we've only had like 8 classes so far, and we've already gotten done with most of the important stuff in the openings, and we're basically pretty close to done with pawn endgames, right? So, uh, by the way, if for all the like new students who might have not been there for the starting few classes, I've posted recordings of all those classes on the like YouTube channel, which whose link I'll send in like an email, so you can watch those if you need like a review on the opening principles and stuff like that. All right. Okay, so getting started now, we're going to do just like a basic review of pawn end games because a lot of people they haven't seen them before yet, right? Okay, let me add a game. Okay, so the first thing that we looked at. Okay, so the first thing that we looked at was the rule of the square, right? So does anybody want to like tell me what the rule of the square was? Isa?
It's like when your pawn's trying to run away from your king, and it has like a square, and if the king can get in there, the square, you can't get a queen. But if he can't, you will.
Yeah. And does the rule of the square work everywhere or only on certain files? Adrian?
I the pawn could like if the king has to like try to get the pawn, and the pawn has to make it before the king gets it. So the pawn has to be the queen.
Yeah, so, but what are the, hey, remember, the rule of the square doesn't work on every file that the pawn is on. So right now the pawn is on the H file. It only works on two files. What are those two files? Viksha?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. How about Vishnu? Do you remember the two files that the rule of the squares works on?
HA and AA.
Yeah, not like necessarily H8, just the entire. If our pawn is on the H file, right, which is this last row, or if our pawn is on the A file, which is the first row, then that's the only two files where we can use the rule of the square. It basically only works if our pawn is on either of the two outermost files. So if our pawn is on like on the F file, somewhere along here, or somewhere along the D file, then we can't use the rule of the square. We have to use some other methods to win the game, alright? But yeah, I think Isa and Adrian explained it pretty well. But just as one last thing, so we have a pawn, right? And we're trying to turn that pawn into a queen. And at the same time, our opponent, whose king is on A8, is trying to stop uh, us from turning into a queen, right? So we have to get to H8 before our opponent gets to H8, right? So now let's start with the methodology. So how do you determine what size the square is, right? And I'll explain what the square actually is in a second, right? So does anybody remember how to determine the size of the square for our pawn? Dave?
It's 6 squares each.
Yeah, okay, but like in general. So in this case, yeah, it's 6 squares, but how about for any general pawn that's like on maybe H5 instead of on H2? Michael?
Uh E E E4. I mean E6. Uh, B7. Uh, no, I mean H7 and uh, uh, 8. 8. Um. Uh, D. I think.
So we're saying D8 and then H8 are like is the square.
Yeah, if the king gets inside.
Okay, so alright, so just really quick. So basically for you guys to determine the size of the square, you have to count how many squares it takes for our pawn to turn into a queen first. So in this case, it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 squares for our pawn to turn into a queen. Now count that same number of squares to the side. One, two, three, four. Sorry. Okay, well that didn't work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then now just fill out the square, alright? So I'll just like fill it out like this, alright? So basically this is the square for the pawn, alright? And what's useful about the square is if you can determine what the four corners of the square are. So right now the four corners are H2, B2, B8, and H8, right? So that's how big the square is for the pawn. If our opponent's king can get inside the square, like for example if it gets to b7 or if it gets to c7, then that means that our opponent's king can stop the pawn. He's going to be able to stop our pawn from turning into a queen. Alright, so is there any questions about that? Satvik? You're on mute, Satvik. Satvik, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
So the pawn still didn't move, so it can still in the first move it can still go 2 blocks.
Yeah, so that's something important we'll get to. So you're right. So right now this pawn hasn't moved yet, so it can move 2 squares at one time, right? So that's like, we'll look at that in a second. But right now, imagine if the pawn can only move 1 square at a time, then it takes 6 squares still, right? So we're just imagining it like that. Okay. Alright, so does anybody have any questions on the square? Alright, no questions? Okay. Alright, so now let's imagine I'm just gonna ask. So imagine it's white to play. Now I move up here. Now what are the four corners of the square for this pawn? Remember, count how many squares it takes until the pawn turns into queen, and count that many squares to the side. Vishnu?
Um, uh, H3, H8, 8, C3, and C8.
Nice. So these are the four corners of the square, right? So that means that if the black king can get inside this square, then he'll be able to stop. Uh,
Why are so less?
he'll be able to stop the white's pawn from turning into a queen. Okay. So now let's say, so right now, can black's king get inside the square?
No.
No, right? Yeah. Black's king can't get inside the square. Because, for example, if he goes to b7, that's still not inside this square right here. So that means that white's pawn should still be able to turn into a queen. Alright, how about now? Can someone else other than Vishnu tell me what the four corners of the square are? Isa?
D4, H4, mm, 8, H8,
Yeah.
and D8.
Nice. So these are the four corners of the square right now for white. So now, can the black king get inside the square? You guys can just say it out loud.
No.
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 No,
No.
exactly.
No.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No.
The black king
No.
can't get inside the square. So now let's say the black king moves over here. Alright, now can somebody tell me the four corners of the square? Tabit?
H8, F8, F6, and H6.
Nice. So these are the four corners of the square, right? And black's king still can't get inside. Now you'll notice this at the end of the game. So here we had these four squares are the four corners of the square, right? Since it's just one move in every direction, because it takes one move for the pawn to turn into a queen, one move to the side, and we fill in the square. So it's just these four squares are the corners of the square for the pawn.
Alright,
Right?
bet.
And so black still can't get inside the square. So that means now we were able to turn into the queen, right? And you guys could see how that worked out, right? So even from the beginning, you could tell black would never be able to catch up. He was never in the square from the start, right? He was always one move late. And also notice that the square it got increasingly smaller, right? Every single time it went down by one diagonals, right? So it always got smaller and smaller until eventually, at the end, we were able to turn into a queen, right? And now I think it's pretty easy for you guys to win this game with an extra queen, right? You just keep your queen, a knight move away from the king until it's all the way in the corner. And then once the king is all the way in the corner, make sure you don't go and put your queen and knight move away because that would be stalemate, right? So keep it like this, and then just bring your king over. Come on, okay. And checkmate, right? So, does anybody have any questions on this? There's a lot of people with their hands raised. Are some of those just from answering questions, or does anybody actually have a question right now?
I have a question.
Okay, yeah, Adrian.
Um, does the pawn when the pawn tries to be the queen, the the four squares, like like the king cannot, like if the pawn turns to the queen, the king cannot cross the.
Yeah. So you're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So you're saying the king can't cross over, right? Because now the queen is controlling all these squares, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's an important thing to point out. Okay. How about Issa? Do you have a question?
No, I did on accident.
Okay. And Malene?
I have one.
Okay. And Michael, do you have a question?
Yeah. Why when the king is at the uh, A1, the black king and uh, the queen is on uh, B4. Can the queen just move like like the knight in attack?
So you're saying like queen b3?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the problem with this is, so if the queen goes a knight move away, this turns into stalemate, alright? And so basically, stalemate, if you guys don't know, is when none of your opponent's pieces can move, but also they're not in check, right? So right now, the only piece for black is the king, right? And the black king, it can't move, but also it's not in check at the same time. So black just can't make any move, right? There's no like legal way for black to play this position. So that means that it's stalemate, and a stalemate is a draw. So that's not very good because you could win if you just kept your king here, right? So that's the reason that you don't go a knight move away. It turns into stalemate. The black king can't move anywhere. Can't go to a2, b2, or b1. All three of these squares are guarded, so the king has nowhere to go because it's at the corner of the board. It can't go backwards anymore, right? That'd be stalemate. So instead, you keep it two squares away now, and that because of that, black just the only move that black has is to go back and forth. He'll just end up going back and forth until eventually our king gets close enough, and now we can give checkmate. All right. Uh, Mega, is that your name?
Oh no, my name's Acorn. I have a question.
Yep.
If that's my what is a stalemate?
Yeah, so stalemate is when none of your opponent's pieces can move, right? So here, right now, the only piece that black has is the king. But let's say even if he had another piece and he couldn't move it at all, since
Oh,
no pieces can move, then and he's not in check, right? This is not check right now. That means that there's no legal way for black to play. So that's stalemate.
got it.
All right, and Rayvanch, do you have a question?
Can the pawn, when it gets to the eighth rank, only turn into a queen?
No. So yeah, if you want to like go back here, so sometimes it's useful to turn into a different piece. Like maybe you want to turn into a knight, because immediately you can give a check. Right now it's not good because you can never checkmate with just a king and a knight, so this would automatically be a draw, right? Almost 99% of the time, you want to turn into a queen, alright? There's almost no use to getting a bishop or a rook because they're the same thing as the queen, right? Whatever the bishop or the rook can do, the queen can do also, right? The only use is maybe sometimes you need to turn into a knight, and this is called under promotion, right? So instead of promoting to something super high like a queen, you're promoting something lesser under it. So that's under promotion when you turn your pawn into something that's not a queen, right? So turning into a knight, this is an example of under promotion. And it's almost always not very useful, especially in the lower levels when it's just you just turn into a queen and give checkmate. But at like advanced levels, you might see like a 1 in a million chances where a grandmaster might turn into a knight and like give a check, and that could be like super useful, right? Okay, so wait, does Malene, do you have one more question on this, or
Yeah,
yeah,
I do.
yeah?
Can you show us like if the pawn turned into a knight and what would happen, and a bishop and what would happen, and a rook and what would happen?
Okay, so the bishop and the rook, it's basically the same as the queen, right? But maybe I'll try and find an example of a knight check, maybe by next class, right? Because I don't have any example on hand right now, okay? But I'll show you one by next class, alright? Okay. So now that's basically all that is in the rule of the square. So now I think we're done with that. Now, looks like we're almost running out of time, but I'll try and like get this example done as quickly as possible. The only other thing that I remember going over other than rule of the square for pawn in games is the opposition, right? So does anybody want to give a quick example of what opposition is? Or define what it is?
Yeah.
Dave?
It's like it's kind of like a race. It's like a race where like the king has to reach the other end before the other one reaches it.
Yeah, so that's the example I'm giving right now. So I'll just go over it really quick. So imagine the black king and the white king right here are in a race, alright? So the black king is trying to get to the first rank, right? So this all the way down here before the white king gets all the way up here, right? So whoever gets to the other side in the least number of moves, they're the ones who wins, okay? So how do we do that? So imagine the two kings just avoid each other completely, alright? Let's just say they keep going, right? They're just avoiding each other. In the end, look, it takes both the black king and the white king 7 moves to reach the other side of the board, right? Both of them need 7 moves to reach the other side. So that means that it was a draw, right? The race is a draw. But with opposition, white is able to get there faster than the black king, alright? And I'll show you how that works. So instead of avoiding each other, imagine the two kings, they tried to face off against each other, alright? So imagine this happened. The two kings are directly opposite of each other, right? So that means neither of them can move forward, right? Because remember the two kings can never be right next to each other. There always is at least one square between the two kings. Right now there's one square between the two kings, right? They're facing off against each other, directly opposite and facing off. That means that neither of the kings can move forward. They can only move to the side or they can move backwards. And right now it's black to move, right? White just played king to d4. Now it's black to move. He has to move to the side or backwards. And you almost never want to go backwards. Imagine if you're in a race, you never see any of the athletes going backwards, right? They always go forwards. But right now the black king can't go forward. So let's just say we move to the side. All right? Now white just keeps going forward. with this. Alright, so in this position right here, white already reached the end of the board, right? He got there in 7 moves. But after 7 moves, black is still 1 move away. So he needs 8 moves. Black needs 8 moves to reach the other side. But white only needed 7. So because of this opposition technique right here, which is when these two kings faced off, black needed 1 move to move to this side. And because of that wasting his time, now white... whoops. Because of wasting his time by moving to the side, white was able to keep going forward. Alright, so it looks like it's almost 7:45, so I'll like continue explaining what the rest of opposition is, but really quick. So you'll notice that, you'll notice that both of these kings, they can't move forward because they're guarding the exact same squares, right? Now, if both of these kings, they can't move forward. So imagine this king moved to the side. Now they're not guarding the same exact squares, right? There's the black king left a hole in the wall. So here it was guarding c5, d5, and e5. And the white king was guarding the same 3 squares. Now when the black king moves, the c5 square is undefended, right? That means that the white king can go and fill the hole in the wall. So even though black got there in time, like it's directly opposite of each other. Since black was the one who moved first, now white can move and fill the hole in the wall, and now he doesn't have to waste any time, right? So don't worry if you're a little bit confused on that right now. On the YouTube like channel, I've posted a bunch of videos explaining opposition, and I'll also go over it really quickly at the beginning of class on next Wednesday or next Monday. I'll maybe try and show it in person.
Sure.
All right. So, is there any other questions right now, Malene?
So how like on this chessboard, like how will you capture both of them? Like how will you
Okay.
capture
Yeah. Yeah.
both of
So
the
right now, this is just an example. It's just the 2 kings.
Oh,
Usually, there's gonna be a few pawns and stuff, but I just did this as a like example to show you what opposition was.
okay.
All right. So, if anyone has any other questions, you can just stay back and ask. But if not, then our next class is going to be Monday on October 14th, and that'll be in person at the Natoma Station Library at 5 p.m. I'll send some more information about that later, alright? But if nobody has any more questions, I will see you guys then. Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.
Bye 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 bye
Bye.
bye.
Do you guys have any questions? Yeah, Malene?
I'm not gonna be here on Monday. I'm just gonna be here like every Wednesday.
Yeah, that's fine. So if you're unable, either the Monday or Wednesday class works. So as long as you just show up to
So,
one, it's fine.
okay.
All right, bye. And
All right. Yeah.
Akash, yeah.
So the thing is, like, I missed Monday's class and I came last. I meant late this time. So like, I didn't really get anything. So I was wondering if like Monday you could explain it a little bit better, cause like I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
get any.
Yeah, I'll explain it on Monday in person. Also,
Alright.
if you want, I'll be sending like a link to this like YouTube channel where I like just post the recordings of all these videos. If you just like
Alright.
want to like just skim through those really quick, like just don't take
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
than 15 minutes. Just skim through them and like look over the main concepts. Then yeah, that should be good. You'll learn
Alright.
most of it. All right. Well then, bye.
Bye.